I'm going to give you kind of an overview briefly of the cycle or phases of escalation. If I do this in a longer presentation, I usually spend a significant amount of time talking about each of those phases and what it looks like and what we should do. Because we just have an hour and 15 minutes, I'd like to zoom through this part and spend more time looking at kids with problems, which is, I know your favorite part, is to watch other people deal with problem behaviors instead of you. So we'll spend our time there. If you're looking at just this phases of escalation, there are some things I think we need to keep in mind as we look at those bigger scenarios. First thing is that when we are dealing with a kid who's not having problems, we call that the calm. The calm is the time when you can give consequences and corrections and you can teach, and it all works really well. Calm is your chance for instruction. No other phase in here works for instruction very well. So whenever we get up into the escalation, what we want to do is we want to get rid of the escalating cycle as quickly as possible so we can get back to instruction. Trying to use instruction inside the cycle can cause us problems. So here's a kid being calm, and all of a sudden there's a trigger. When there's a trigger, you'll be able to tell because the kid generally is less on task. They're distracted easily. That trigger may have been somebody called them a name or disrespected them. It could be that they know there's a consequence coming. It could be that they're afraid of something coming in the future, etc. But what happens is you get some distraction. When we notice that there's been a trigger, our job should be to give them a direction. What should you be doing? What we see a lot is things are going well, there's a trigger, kid gets a little bit off, and then if an adult comes over and challenges, a challenge to a trigger generally ends up in agitation. So what we want to really focus on is redirection and distraction at the early phases. When you get to agitation, you'll notice those behaviors as kids that become real stiff and fidgety. You'll notice a lot of this kind of with their hands and quick movements and eye darts. And if you say something to them, you're likely to hear this. I know! They don't want to talk. Agitation is just, I'm hyper-focused on this thing that's bugging me. If at agitation, you're going to have to try even harder to redirect them. You're not going to be able to say, hey, look at this. You're going to have to go over and say, this is really cool. I'm going to need you. Come over here with me. Because if you don't make it really big, that distraction isn't going to work. It might not work anyway. But after agitation, if we can't break the chain, if you can't break the cycle here, after agitation comes full-blown acceleration. And acceleration means it's going to get bad fairly fast. The only question here at acceleration is how far will it go before it starts coming back down? When we get to the top, it's called the peak. At acceleration and peak, our strategies change from distraction and redirection to safety. Once you start really firing up that big tantrum, we're now just trying to keep it down. It's not about, here's your consequence, that's going to make it worse. Once they start going up, our only thought is keeping a lid on it. Once that lid hits, they're going to come back down. But that lid looks different for different kids. I've worked with kids that would do that little fire-up acceleration 100 times a day, but it would never go very high. And I've worked with kids that occasionally hit the acceleration that went all the way to hurting people. Desks flying through the air and threatening people's lives and all those kinds of things. So, different kids have different peaks. Here, the idea is keep a lid on it. Here, the idea is keep everybody safe. Once kids hit the peak, a lot of times they'll show kind of a confusion. They'll even make an excuse or blame project it. It's like, I'll hit somebody and then I kind of realize, uh-oh, I went too far and I wouldn't have done that if he wouldn't have done that. You know, I'm not going to take responsibility for this. And the big mistake that people make when that happens is, it was too your fault. And what we get very quickly is more escalation. Once they've hit that peak and they say, I wouldn't have, it's not, and you can tell they're coming down, let them come down. I know. It's his fault. I know. Just bring it down. All we're trying to do there is get them back down. If you try during this de-escalation to give them a consequence or reteach them or have any other kind of conversation, there's a great chance that it'll spike right back up again. Leave them alone. If they're de-escalating, back off. When you feel like de-escalation has come pretty much all the way down and we're ready for the last phase, which is called recovery, here's how I know if they've been in recovery now. Ask them to do something really simple. Hey, you did a great job of calming down. Could I just get you to move to that chair right there? And if he says, screw you, I know we're not at recovery yet. If he says, all right, then I know now he's willing to follow some directions. Let's make him successful. How do I integrate him back into the curriculum so I can start saying, good, thank you for doing that, thank you. And once he's back in the curriculum and being successful at recovery, we'll go back to calm. At calm is when I can talk about the consequences for the problem behaviors and reteach what would be a better way to deal with that. But remember, all of those teaching components really only happen in an effective way at the calm stage. So here we're trying to redirect, here we're trying to keep a lid on it, keep it safety for everybody, and here we're just letting it come back down. So as we look at those things, there are some kind of big summaries we could say. First of all, take advantage of the calm to teach kids how to handle the triggers. I know this is a trigger for you. I know this is a trigger for you. Teach them what to do. Teach them replacement behaviors for those things. People are very good at predicting when triggers and agitation come. If I said, I'm coming to your school tomorrow, I would like to see that kid have some problem behaviors. I can only be here for 5 minutes. When should I come? People can tell you. Come at 10:07 a.m. Stand at the back of this class, you'll see this going. If you can predict it, we can prevent it. So, start thinking ahead. If we know when there's agitation coming because of a trigger, step in and don't let that trigger happen in the first place. This is where I might assign seats because I know she's a trigger for you. We'll just take that trigger away. Move that away. That doesn't mean I don't need to teach her how to handle the trigger, but it would work a lot better if the trigger never happened while we're getting this instruction going. So think ahead how you can prevent those things or intervene early. Once the peak happens, or we're headed for a peak via acceleration, focus on safety, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. How do we keep everybody safe in that environment? At de-escalation, don't confront. This is one of the things that I see not happening very often when kids are escalating, is the kid escalates, they get to the peak, they go, oh, I made a mistake, and then the teacher says, let me tell you what you've earned from all of that. And that just makes the kid go, well, then screw it again, and we go right back up. Don't talk during de-escalation. Just have them sit somewhere quietly and let them come down. Finally, at recovery, you don't really debrief on here's what you're going to get for a consequence, but you can start to say, yeah, there are some things we could do to help you with that. What would have been a better way? We can do that. But you're really trying to get them back into instruction. The real instruction for the problem is going to come at calm when we get back there. So, first thing to think about is escalating behaviors start with a problem behavior that the student has. And problem behaviors have consequences. But those have to be things that you teach to the kids ahead of time. Anytime you have to invent a consequence, you're the bad guy. So if I come over here and say, don't like the way you're doing that, let me think. Detention. That jerk just gave me detention. I'm the bad guy. Whereas if I would have said ahead of time, here's the consequence for that. It's detention. You guys don't want detention. You don't need detention. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. And then I teach it and I facilitate it. But if I come in and she's doing it wrong, I can say, oh man, remember we talked about this? That's not right. What would be a better way? Yeah, now you're going to get that detention. I hate you're getting it. I'm on your side. If you've taught it ahead of time, it's their responsibility, not yours. I always like to think about it that all these negative consequences that could happen to you are hanging from the ceiling. I have no control over them as the teacher. You do as a student. Your behavior makes them stay there or fall. If they fall, they may bounce off of me to land on you, but you're the one that made them fall. And the only way you can get that across to kids is if you taught that ahead of time. If you come up with it and they haven't heard that before, they're going to assume you made it up to come and get them. And if they believe you're trying to get them, escalation again. So it's got to be put back on them. So we've created all these videos. In the state of Kentucky, there's a law that every person who works in a school must be trained on methods for reducing restraint and seclusion in a school. So we've created a bunch of videos over the last few years that we use to have people get this training. There's a variety of things they can do. One of them is to watch these videos. So I'm going to show you a lot of videos. They're all make-believe. I've written scripts based on kids that I've known and situations I've known in my life. We've hired actors to play the roles. The kids are all from School for Creative and Performing Arts. The biggest problem we have with kids is that they all fight over who gets to play the bad kid in each scenario. But I want to alert you to a couple of things. One is, we try to make these look as real as we can. There are some things obviously we can't do. I'm always going to show you here's the wrong way and here's the right way. So I'll show a kid having this problem and a teacher handling it in a way that escalates it. We'll talk about it, and then I'll show you a kid having the same behavior and a teacher using a better set of interventions that de-escalate it. I want to alert you to this fact that the things I'm talking about do not work like this every single time. If they did, I would be extremely wealthy. They're probabilities. You have a better chance of getting on the videos because I wrote the scripts. I get to have a happy ending on all the good ones. But in the real world, it may work and it may not. It's simply your best chance if you follow these guidelines. So last things to think about when we talk about provocative behaviors: speak privately to the kids. Identify it as a problem for them and not you. Offer them some choices that, again, aren't ultimatums, but possibilities for fixing it. How could you fix this problem? You've got to deliver this very matter of fact and let them choose. When we're teaching these things, they shouldn't be in isolation. Teach the entire school, your entire classroom, what it means to dress appropriately, handle frustration with another person without saying something that's provocative. Teach the replacement behaviors like we would with any other thing. So what happens is, when a kid is non-compliant, what I want to know right off the bat is, are you non-compliant for a reason that I can fix, or are you being non-compliant just to be non-compliant? And I don't want to spend the whole class figuring that out, so I'm going to make it happen right away. I'm going to give you one direction. One. And I can tell you what the kid's going to say. Okay, why don't you sit down and I'll get you a book? No use sitting down. I don't have a book or a pencil. Why don't I go to my locker and get a pencil? No, you sit down, we'll talk book, then pencil. Well, it's not going to do me any good to sit down if I don't have a book and pencil. Why don't I go over here and get paper? What I need to see from you is sitting down. When you're sitting down, we'll talk book, pencil, paper. And don't give in. One simple direction that they have to follow. If he or she does not follow that direction, they weren't going to do any of this. You'll just know it much sooner. But if you do the, oh really, you don't have a pencil? Well, what can we do about that? Why don't we do this? Oh, that's not going to work either because I also don't have paper. And it's a wild goose chase. And now the kid is leading you. So don't give them more than one direction. If and when that student follows that direction, say, thanks, great job, I appreciate you sitting down. Now, let's work on the book. Oh, I don't have a pencil or paper, I need to. Nope, but I'm going to get you a book because you're sitting down. Here's your book. Tell you what. You open that book to page 48 and I'll be looking for a pencil. No use opening this book to 48 if I don't have a pencil. I said I'll get you a pencil. Show me open to 48. Continue to offer one direction at a time and force that direction to be followed before going to the next one. That's the only way to make sure that there is going to be compliance. Again, if you follow them on every one of their excuses, you'll never get anything else done. You've got to take it back to one thing. I do the same thing with an entire class. If there's an entire class that's out of control, I stop everybody. I need everybody doing this. Nope, everybody, show me this. Get everybody to do some one thing, and then use that to say thank you. Here's the next thing. But with individual kids, it'll look very similar. So as we talk more about noncompliance, don't forget to praise the kids that are being compliant. So as we start this out, and one kid's being noncompliant, I'm going to say to them, here's what I need to see you do. And then, great job guys, you guys are getting this done. Come back. So I'm still waiting to see you sit down. Well, I don't have a book or a pencil. Show me sitting down, we'll talk book and pencil. Go over here. Don't create the Hawkeye, just me and you going to go back and forth. Make sure that you give them the direction and then talk to other kids. We don't want to set up these classrooms where once the kid misbehaves, that's all we're focused on. It's confrontational and it takes away from the rest of the class. So it's a bunch of hit and run. Here's what it is, move and talk. Here's what it is, move and talk. And keep doing it in that way over and over. Again, remember, these are not ultimatums. Do it or else. It's, I would like to help you. You do that, and I'll help you. It's a good choice for you. You really want these things you say you want? I'd like to help you. But you've got to do what I'm asking you to do before we get there. So again, keep in mind that one very clear direction. It can't be complex. It can't be, you show me sitting down, paper and pencil out, solving 5 problems, and one thing. Doesn't matter even how old the kids are, how complex the task is. It's one really simple thing. All you're looking for is some compliance to reinforce before you move on to the next compliance. And if the first compliance is really complicated, you're likely not to get there. So break any complex task down into what's the first step and give that one first, which is what we just said. So here's an example. In this example, it's edited poorly. You should hear the teacher at one point say, show me seated and then I'll help you. That part somehow is not edited in there, so later when he says, your direction was to be seated, you didn't hear the first part where he gave that direction.
So everybody should be ready to do this now on your own. So the next thing I want you to do is the next 2 problems in the book all by yourself. Okay? Go ahead.
I can't. I don't have a book.
Okay, I'll help you with that in just a second, Caven. Okay, just a minute.
That's mine.
Finders keepers.
Caven, your direction was to be in your seat.
But I don't have a book or pencil. I need to go to my locker.
I said I would help you with that in just a second, but your first direction was to be in your seat. Once you're in your seat, I'll help you get a pencil and a book. Okay? Okay, thank you, Caven. I'll go ahead and get you a book and a pencil, and you're ready to go. Thank you for following directions.
So notice after he gave him the direction, here's what I need to see you do. He didn't stand there and stare at him. He walked over and was talking to another student. What I always like to point out is, while he was over there talking to that girl, if he has any peripheral vision at all, he knows exactly what that other kid is doing. You don't have to be staring at that kid to know whether he's following that direction or not. And once the kid followed the direction, then he went and got the pencil and book. Now, he knew where these things were. He was still asking the student to comply before we get this going. So there is a contingency there, which just says, you haven't been complying, I would like to help you. Show me some compliance, I'll help you. I'm going to go to this one. I've got another non-compliance. This one's on a bus. When the State Department asked us to make some of these, they said, sometimes we have problems on the bus. So we tried to make one of these with a bus kind of thing. Same issue, non-compliance. But I think there's something unique about this one. Take a look.
You need to sit down so we can get the bus moving. We're not going while you're standing. Harper, that includes you. Sit down.
Yeah, whatever.
Harper, I'm not going to tell you again. I'm going to count to 3, and if you aren't seated, you're out of here. 1, 2, 3. Off. Let's go.
Forget it. I'm going home.
Not on my bus, you aren't.
What's up?
Harper needs to be escorted off.
All right, Harper. Let's go.
Seriously, this is ridiculous.
Let's go. There are these kids out there, like Harper, that if I'm being totally honest, I'd have to say, I kind of enjoyed watching her get kicked off the bus. She is super obnoxious. You say something to her and she says the snottiest, surly remark, and there's a bit of satisfaction in going, bye, Harper, but like the other kids are. But what if I say, Harper gets kicked off the bus occasionally, and when she does, she doesn't come to school for a week, and she's already failing a lot of her classes. Then it kicks back in, oh right, I'm the adult here. And my job is to make the kid successful, even though I find this kid very annoying. My job is, how could I set her up to do it right, even when it's more pleasurable for me to see her do it wrong and get punished. And that's something that I think we have to be honest with ourselves about. That there are sometimes kids push you to the point where I don't do all of the things I should do because, let's face it, that kid leaving the room feels awfully good sometimes. And we have to just keep thinking about, again, eye on the prize. The win for me is that that kid maintains and stays in school. That's my job. And when I do that and make that happen, I'm the winner in that sense. So here's the solution video, which is very simple. The difference is, in this one, the bus driver is going to give her a reason. Here's what the rule is. That's why I need you to do this. And when Harper says something rude back, she says, here are some options. Up to you. Makes Harper make a decision.
Okay guys, let's have a seat so we can get started. I can't move the bus while we're standing because it's a safety issue, so sit down so we can get home, please. Come on Harper, have a seat please.
Hang on, I'm talking.
Can you have a seat there and turn around and finish your conversation, or even hop in the seat behind you and go ahead and finish your conversation, because I can't move the bus while you're standing. I'm not allowed.
Fine.
Thanks, Harper.
Now I know that this bus driver right now is thinking, I hate Harper. And that's okay. We can't help what you're feeling, and I understand it. But she also, at the same time, said, I'm going to give her every opportunity to be successful instead of escalating her behavior. In the last one, she just simply said, sit down. Harper said, whatever. And she said, I'm counting to 3, which in the history of behavior management has never worked to change anybody. 1, 2, 3, you're out. This time she said, here's why. Here are your choices. And it worked. It may or may not have worked. In this case, it did. But again, you don't have to love the kid to still be thinking this is the right thing to do. We've got to get people to think about that eye on the prize part. The next one is disrespect. Now, if you thought the last one was hard in terms of thinking about getting adults to think that way, this is the hardest one. If a kid is disrespectful to an adult, the adults are far more likely than any other of these behaviors to completely abandon de-escalation and go after the kid because it's personal. You cannot allow kids to let you take things personally. They are winning that little battle whenever that happens. You just can't let it happen. Because you cannot win a power struggle with a kid. They can always take it one step higher than you can. Say, I'll call your parents, I'll cut your phone line. You know, we could do this all day. I'll come to your house, I'll slash your tires. And where are you going to end this? When they say, I'm gonna kill you, I'll kill you first. Okay? You are going to get fired for threatening to kill a student. So if you know you can't win this, don't start it. Simply let them know right up front, these are the rules, these are the consequences. If they know those are the consequences, then when that happens, you can just say, you know the consequence, and move on. Do not allow them to drag you into this. So when you think disrespect, I think the first thing we have to think about is, what does that mean? And instead of teaching disrespect, we should be teaching respect. And I don't think we do that. And I know we've got a lot of PBIS schools that say respect, but I would bet they haven't gone through with their kids and said, what does it look like to be respectful to somebody when you disagree with them? What does it look like to be respectful to somebody when you feel like they've disrespected you? What is it? And if we haven't had that discussion, then we don't have that curriculum. The other thing that I think happens a lot is we've got kids that are doing things that they don't think are disrespectful, but we think are. And it may be a cultural mismatch, an age mismatch, whatever, but if we haven't discussed and taught this, you can't assume that we're all on the same page. So let's start with, we've all got to agree what is respect. And when we see something that isn't that, that would be disrespect. So put it back to your school-wide rules. Use real examples. This should be something we talk about and teach all the time. So here's a scenario where the student is being disrespectful, but that disrespect is awesome for him because it gets the teacher to completely lose his mind.
Quit it.
Some of you students are unbelievably rude. I don't know why I waste my time with you. Stupid butthead. What did you say?
Nothing.
So what'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
What good can come of this confrontation right here? There are two outcomes. I called you a butthead. Now what? Or I didn't say anything. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. And this is just, but the bigger thing here to me is, and I see this a lot, when you have been disrespectful, I am going to physically intimidate you. This is a really poor model. Is this what we want other kids to do when someone's disrespected you? We have to model respect if we're going to expect to get respect from kids. So the physical confrontation plays right into this. You know what every other kid is thinking right now? Man, this guy is easy to get going. What could we do tomorrow? I'm going to write a note about him and put it on his desk ahead of time. He'll flip out tomorrow. We won't have to do this reading at all. You're letting everybody know I'm a target. I am so thin-skinned, I feel so small about myself that when someone calls me a name or does anything disrespectful, I fly off the handle. Instead of saying, I'm a confident adult, kids being disrespectful doesn't freak me out. That's the message we have to be delivering because the disrespect is there for a reason. It's to get you going. Me being disrespectful to you is me saying to you, I'm not giving you respect. And if your response is to fly off the handle, why should I respect you? So we want to be able to think about how do we continue to acknowledge the kids that are doing it right all the time, as well as talking to kids that are doing it wrong. So if I see a kid being disrespectful to a peer or to me, It should it should simply be, that's not respectful. We've talked about that. We'll talk about this more in a little bit. Don't take the focus off of instruction to go talk with that. That lets everybody know. We taught this ahead of time. So when I say, that's not respectful, you and I need to talk later, that lets everybody know, I noticed it, you all know why it's not respectful because we've talked about it, but I'm not going to let that bother me. We'll deal with that privately. This isn't something, hey, everybody else, take note. You can't distract me from instruction by saying something disrespectful. It doesn't work on me. So you want to be really calm about it. I was thinking, when I was worked in residential treatment, kids have said every horrible thing to me that I think could possibly be said over the years that I worked there. I'll kill you, I'll kill your family, I'll kill your dog, and as soon as I say, you better shut up about my dog, I have set myself up for them to walk by going woof to me the rest of the time I'm there. Don't give them that opportunity. They can't upset you. It's the same as the provocation. They can't provoke me. They can't insult me. They can either stick with the rules or not, and there's a consequence for that. But I don't bow down to the little things that children do. So you've got to keep following through. I love this final video of disrespect because this teacher is in such absolute control.
Hey, quit it.
I do appreciate the people that are listening. John, I need to see you after I'm done with reading this section. Now, let's get back to what we're reading.
Now, everybody knows this teacher's not going to play. He's not going to do that. He's totally in charge. He recognized it, and he's calling it out, but it's not going to affect what we do in this room. One last one I want to do is aggressive behavior, and I'm going to do it fast. What we want to think about mostly with aggressive behaviors is finding it early. Verbal altercations turn into bigger altercations. What we want to do is when you see two kids having a verbal altercation, consider that a trigger, at least. And you want to distract or you want to redirect. So if I see these two kids really arguing, I'll do what I can to redirect. April, come here, I want to show you something. But I know, but I want to show you this, it's really cool. Distract. If you can't get that distraction to work really quickly, then you're going to have to get in there and you're going to have to try to help get it apart. What you want to avoid doing when you're trying to break it apart is taking a side. She said this, no, she said that. Well, let me think. I think you're right. Because that will make, they're both escalating, that's going to make her escalate more. So what I try to do is I try to fix it myself for today and say, we'll solve this later. Because I have a much better chance of solving this when they're both calm. So here's one where I see kids escalating and all I do is call them names.
Move or I'm going to punch you, okay?
Wow, that's really scary.
Right,
I'm
guys,
shaking.
Guys,
Every day the same thing, whining about who gets what chair. It's like a couple of babies. Figure it out.
I agree, he is a baby.
Well, figure it out.
You know what? I'm not going to ask you one more time.
Find another seat.
So I had multiple opportunities to break in here, and all I did was go over and call them both babies and walk away. So what I want to be seeing is this is escalating. These guys are getting mad at each other, and instead of keep saying, figure it out, I need to go over there and work on it. Now what's going to happen when I go over to work on it is I'm going to give them a solution, and they're going to say, no, I don't like that solution. And then I'm going to say, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I offer a temporary solution. It's just for today. And I say, we'll flip a coin to see who's the winner on this, but we're not going to do it right now. I don't tell them this, but the reason we're not doing it right now is because whoever loses is going to be pissed off. So I'm going to wait until you're both calm, and we'll have a discussion about how this might work and what the loser might do while you're calm. Then we'll solve the problem.
don't move, I'm gonna punch you.
Wow, that's really scary. I'm shaking.
Hey guys, look, we have a seating chart. Who's supposed to be sitting right here?
Me.
I've been sitting here for forever.
All right, here's what let's do for today. We're going to flip a coin to see who does this, but for right now, why don't you just sit at my desk? It's got the swivel chair, it's comfortable. Go over there.
Okay.
All right?
I'll sit there.
Now, I know you wanted to sit here today. We'll flip a coin for the future, but this is where we'll be today. So I think a lot of times what we want to do is when we see that altercation is to solve it completely right now. And if there's a way to do that, that's great. But again, if two kids are escalating and you've got to say, you're right, you're wrong, one of them's going to escalate more. So I would rather solve it superficially now and have a discussion later when we're both back in the calm. Remember that calm phase is where our things, our instruction, our consequences, the things are really workable. Now, here's the way we do this with schools. We have found, as you probably have, if we go to a school and say, here's what it looks like when kids are disrespectful, here's what you should do, nobody changes any behaviors at all. And I don't, not because people are bad, but just that's the way it works. So here's what we've been doing. We create these little sets of modules like this with videos, and we give them to PLCs. So every PLC in the school watches these videos. So here's a PLC, and they watch. This is what it's like when kids are disrespectful. Here's what that means. Here's what you should do. And then they discuss. What's it look like in your group when kids are disrespectful to you? What do they say? What do they do? What are some things you respond with? What should we be teaching them up front to get rid of that? And we force that discussion. Then we say, watch the solution video. What do you think about that? Would that work with your kids? How would that have to be altered to work? And then they leave. This is like a 20-minute session. They leave after that 20 minutes with, during the next month, think about one or two kids that are disrespectful to you and come back to tell the others in your group what you did and how it was like the things we just talked about. That forces people to have something in their mind for the next month. The next month they come into the PLC, they have a discussion about that, and then they get a new scenario to think about. And this is what we've been trying to do to get people to think about these things all year rather than simply have a hit and run in-service kind of a thing that, again, is just not going to be effective. We've been trying to do this with a lot of different things. Escalation is one of them. The other one is just simply using effective instructional practices. We're trying to change great big things with one big swoop instead of saying, keep it in people's mind and engage them with small amounts of practice over time. So that's kind of the nutshell of that. There are some resources that discuss this more. One of my friends, Jeff Colvin, has a video series on this. I don't know if it's through Iris Media. I don't know if that's out of print now or not. So any questions about any of the things we've talked about this afternoon? Okay. I know that's a ton of content to just fly through really fast, but I guess I think about it like an overview of the way we have to kind of think about things. So thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the rest of your conference.